She blocked my driveway every single day like she owned the street. But when she parked her shiny BMW across my driveway for the last time, I didn't call the cops. I made her car disappear. And what happened next had the whole neighborhood shaking. Moving into a new neighborhood is supposed to feel like a fresh start. That's what I told myself as I unloaded boxes from the back of my truck and took in the quiet cul-de-sac in suburban Georgia. It had that classic picture-perfect look: clean sidewalks, trimmed hedges, rows of identical two-story homes, and birds chirping like a Disney movie. I figured I'd finally found peace after years of city traffic and late-night noise. I even remember saying to my dog Tank, "This is it, boy, we made it." He wagged his tail like he agreed. The first few days were great. Neighbors waved as they walked their dogs. Someone even brought over cookies and said, "Welcome to the block." But then, on day 4, I met her, Karen, a woman in her early 50s, short blonde bob, yoga pants that never looked like they'd seen a gym, and sunglasses so big they made her look like a fly. She strutted across her front lawn like it was a red carpet and headed straight toward me. "I'm Karen, HOA president," she said, without even a hello. "Just a few things. Your garbage bins are supposed to be behind the side gate, not visible from the street, and you'll need to repaint your shutters. They're a little off standard." I blinked. I just moved in 3 days ago." "Yet," she said with a tight smile. "That's why I'm being nice about it." I should have known then Karen wasn't just a neighbor. She was a one-woman army of rules, opinions, and superiority complexes. At the time, I didn't push back. I gave her a nod and a polite, "I'll look into that." Tank growled softly beside me. Smart dog. Things didn't escalate right away. It started small. She'd leave sticky notes on my door about my porch light being too bright. She'd ring my doorbell to tell me the recycling bin lid had blown open once during a thunderstorm. But I kept telling myself, just let it go, she'll get bored. I figured if I stayed polite and ignored her nonsense, she'd find a new target. I was wrong. A few weeks later, I came out early in the morning to head to work and found a sleek, blue BMW parked directly in front of my driveway. Not near my driveway, across it. I couldn't even back out. I assumed it was a visitor or maybe a delivery driver. I knocked on a few doors before ending up at Karen's house. She opened the door with a mug that said "Boss Lady." "Opa, that's mine," she said casually when I pointed out the car. "Could you move it? I need to get to work." Karen took a sip of her coffee and smiled. "It's only for a few minutes. I didn't think you'd mind." "Well, I do. It's my driveway." "Technically," she said, leaning against her doorframe, "the street is public property. I'm allowed to park wherever I want." I stared at her. "You're blocking my driveway." And I said I'd only be a few minutes. Then she shut the door in my face. I was late to work that day. That incident set the tone for what came next. She started parking there more often, sometimes for an hour, sometimes overnight. I left polite notes on her windshield. She ignored them. I tried calling the non-emergency line for local law enforcement. They said unless the car was abandoned or blocking emergency access, there wasn't much they could do. I even asked the HOA for help until I remembered Karen was the HOA, the only member. In fact, she'd driven everyone else off the board. With her micromanagement, I wasn't some easily rattled guy. I'd dealt with bad landlords, rude neighbors, noisy college kids. But there was something about Karen's smugness that got under my skin. She knew what she was doing, and worse, she enjoyed it. It wasn't just the parking either. She began reporting me to the HOA herself for nonsense like an unapproved garden flag and leaving a lawn chair too close to the curb. Every week brought a new note taped to my door, written in capital letters like she was trying to parent me. The real breaking point came on a Sunday morning when I had a vet appointment for Tank. He'd been throwing up the night before, and by morning he could barely move. I was panicked, rushing to get him into the back seat, only to find Karen's BMW right across my driveway again. No sign of her outside. I knocked. No answer. I rang the bell 4 times. Nothing. I called her straight to voicemail. I shouted toward the window. Nothing. Tank whimpered beside me, and I felt this tight knot in my chest. I called for an Uber, but the driver couldn't get to my house. I had to carry my 70-pound pit bull 3 blocks to meet him. The whole time, I kept looking back, thinking, this is insane. This woman is dangerous in her own way. Tank made it through, thank God. But that whole ordeal lit a fire in me. No more being nice. No more notes. No more calls. I realized something that day. Karen didn't care about rules. She cared about power. And the more I played by her game, the more she'd keep winning. I needed a different strategy, so I started documenting everything. I set up a small camera on my porch that pointed toward the driveway. Every time Karen blocked it, I made it note time, date, duration. I asked neighbors if they had complaints too, and several of them shared stories. One woman, Marlene, said Karen told her to take down that ugly wreath from her door because it lowered property values. A guy down the street had to fight with her to install a small ramp for his elderly mom. Apparently, Karen had claimed it was a visual disruption. I compiled photos, videos, even timestamps from my work emails to prove when I'd been late due to her car. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with it, but I knew I was building a case, not just for me, but for everyone Karen had bullied. Then came the cherry on top. A meeting notice slipped into everyone's mailbox. An emergency HOA assembly. Called by Karen. Her note said it was to address increasing violations and lower community standards, which was code for, I'm going to yell at everyone. Only 3 people showed up, me, Marlene, and Karen. She stood at the head of the community center table like she was giving a TED talk. I've noticed a decline in proper decorum, she began, eyes flicking to me. Certain residents seem to think this is a trailer park, not a residential community. I held up a folder. Before you go on, I have something to share. Karen looked annoyed. This isn't a Q&A session. It's not a debate either. It's documentation of you blocking my driveway, harassing neighbors, breaking your own HOA rules. Her expression changed. A slight twitch at the corner of her lips. I've got pictures, videos, witness statements. I even called the city. They're not too thrilled with some of your enforcements, Marlene chimed in. I'll back him up. She's been a nightmare. Karen tried to recover. This is just personal attacks. None of this is. It's called a pattern, I interrupted. And it ends now. She stood, slammed her notebook closed, and left without another word. That was the last time she parked in front of my driveway. But I wasn't done. The game had changed, and if Karen thought she'd humiliated or scared me, she had no idea what I was preparing next. Even though she hadn't parked in front of my driveway since the HOA meeting, I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her don't just stop. They wait, they scheme, they simmer like a pot just under boiling. So, I didn't relax. I paid attention. I watched her patterns, her movements, her expressions when she passed by my house. She still gave me that smug look, tight-lipped and proud, like she'd somehow won. She hadn't. If anything, the silence meant she was planning something. Worse start. That week, I started looking for solutions, not revenge. Not yet, but something permanent. Something legal. My driveway couldn't stay a battleground. I wasn't going to spend the next 10 years living like I was in a neighborhood Cold War. I did what any guy would do. I went online. First, I looked up local ordinances. I read through county codes about street parking, driveways, towing laws. Most of the info was a maze of legal terms, but after digging for a few hours, I figured out the basics. If a car was blocking a private driveway and not on public street space, and if I had evidence and proof of obstruction, I could request a private tow. The issue was, the street in front of my driveway was technically public, but the entrance to my driveway, the portion Karen always blocked, was classified as an access point. According to the code, repeated obstruction of a residential access may warrant civil action or private removal under municipal discretion. That was my golden thread. But still, I didn't want to do anything sloppy. I needed someone who knew how to do this right, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions and knew the law better than Karen did. That's when I remembered my old high school friend Jamal. We hadn't talked in a while, but I remembered he'd started a towing and roadside assistance business a few towns over. I shot him a message on Facebook. Ever do private tows for driveway blockings? I've got a HOA nightmare. He replied in 2 minutes. Say less. What's the address? That weekend we met for coffee. Jamal was the same guy I remembered, bigger, now beard grown out, always smiling but with a look in his eye like he was ready to fight for what was right. I explained the whole situation to him, every detail, the fake rules, the parking, the harassment, the way she laughed when she blocked me in. He leaned back and said, "Man, some people think the world revolves around them. But now we can fix this. Easy." I told him I wasn't looking to slash tires or play dirty. I just wanted my peace. I wanted her car gone the next time she tried to pull that stunt. Jamal smiled. Then we'll do it clean. All I need is photo proof, a call from you when she does it again, and I'll have one of my guys on standby. We'll tow it to a private, impound lot out of city limits. She won't even know who moved it. I nodded, but something inside me still hesitated. It felt big, like crossing a line. But I remembered Tank limping beside me while I ran down the street to meet that Uber, his breathing shallow, his eyes glassy. I remembered standing outside Karen's door, pounding and begging while she ignored me. That memory sharpened everything. Let's do it, I said. And so the waiting game began. I didn't have to wait long. 3 days later, on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon, I came home from work and there it was again, Karen's BMW, smack in the middle of my driveway. Not just blocking part of it, but the entire thing. She had backed in like she was trying to make a point. The audacity of it actually made me laugh. I checked my porch cam. She had pulled in 10 minutes before I got home. Just like old times. I took a photo with my phone, then another, then a short video showing me trying and failing to enter my driveway. Then I made the call. Jamal answered on the first ring. She did it. Yeah, right now, full block. Say no more. I'm sending Kev. He's 12 minutes out. Just stay cool. So I sat on my porch with a glass of iced tea, watching the sky darken as the sun dipped behind thick clouds. Tank sat beside me, tail wagging, sensing something was about to go down. My heart was racing, part excitement, part nerves. I didn't know how Karen would react, but I wasn't going to back down. 12 minutes later, Kev rolled up in a dark gray flatbed tow truck, no decals, no business name, just clean and quiet. He didn't even honk. He gave me a thumbs up, then got to work. It was surgical. He backed in perfectly, winched the BMW up without a single tire screech, secured it, and drove off like a ghost. Gone in less than 5 minutes. I sat there stunned. It was so quiet, so smooth, so final. An hour passed before Karen came storming out of her house in slippers, holding a bag of groceries. She stopped mid-step. Her keys were in her hand. She looked left, right, spun around, stared at the empty space in front of my house, like she couldn't believe her eyes. Then it started to screaming. She marched up and down the street yelling, "Where is my car? Who took my car?" Neighbors peeked out windows. One guy even filmed it. She came stomping toward my house like a raging bull. "Did you see anything?" she shouted. I blinked. "You mean your illegally parked car?" She froze, chest heaving. "You had no right." "Actually," I interrupted, "I do have a right. You were blocking access to my home." Again, I have videos, photos, documentation of repeated offenses. I contacted the city. They told me it's within my rights to arrange private towing, and I did. She turned red. "This is harassment." "No," I said calmly. "You have been harassing me." I asked nicely. "I left notes. I gave you chances. This is the result of your choices." Karen looked like she was going to explode. "Where's my car?" I shrugged. "Private impound lot. I can give you the number, but there's going to be storage fees, and towing fees, and paperwork. I'm calling the police. Go ahead." She did. The police came, and I stood calmly on my porch while she screamed and waved her arms. I gave the officer the evidence, photos, videos, the law citations. He even showed him the email from the city office that explained my rights. Karen stood beside him, arms crossed, shaking her head like a child caught stealing cookies. The officer finished reviewing my info, then said, "Ma'am, it looks like you've been warned multiple times. Your car was parked illegally. You may be responsible for the fees to retrieve it." Karen looked like she'd been slapped. "You mean you're not going to arrest him?" The officer sighed. "No, ma'am." He followed protocol. "Next time, don't block driveways." And that was it. They left. She stormed inside. And I sat back down on my porch and took another sip of iced tea. That night, I got messages from 3 neighbors. All of them said the same thing. "Thank you." The next morning, Karen's car was still gone, and for the first time since I moved into that neighborhood, my driveway was completely clear, and I knew it would stay that way. After the tow, things got quiet. Not peaceful, just quiet, like the still air before a thunderstorm. Karen didn't speak to me, didn't wave at anyone, didn't stomp around in her usual showy way. She just went dark, but I could feel it. The way her blinds twitched when I walked by. The way her car, once it reappeared, stayed parked exactly in the center of her driveway, like it was scared to wander. And I knew Karen too well by then. She wasn't the type to let anything go. The silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. For a few weeks, life started to feel normal. I could leave my house, come home late, take Tank on walks without worrying about being blocked in. I even got to know a few of the other neighbors better. Marlene invited me over for coffee one Saturday and introduced me to her husband, who turned out to be a retired cop. When I told him what had happened with Karen, he just shook his head and said, "There's one on every block." But the break didn't last. It never does with people like Karen. It started with little things. My mailbox mysteriously fell off its post one morning. Looked like it had been knocked with force, but there were no tire tracks or dents on the pole. I replaced it. 2 days later, someone left a bag of dog poop on my porch. I thought maybe it was some teen prank, until I noticed something familiar: pink nail polish smeared on the edge of the bag. The exact shade Karen wore, subtle, petty, childish, and 100% her. Still, I didn't confront her. I let it go. I wanted to believe she'd eventually get bored. Then came the letter. It showed up folded neatly in my mailbox, typed, unofficial-looking HOA, letterhead with Karen's signature at the bottom. The letter accused me of violating a list of community standards, including unpermitted security camera usage, unauthorized landscaping modifications, and, my favorite, displaying an unapproved pet structure. She meant Tank's doghouse. According to the letter, I was being fined $500 and had 14 days to correct the issues or face further action. I almost laughed. It was such a ridiculous power move. Clearly, Karen was trying to reassert control after getting embarrassed with the tow. I called the city's housing department to confirm. Sure enough, her fines were baseless. Her authority as HOA president didn't give her the right to issue financial penalties without a vote, especially since she was the only active member. It was like a kid declaring herself queen of the backyard and charging taxes on the swing set. But I still had a problem. Karen was playing dirty, and now she was doing it on paper. That meant she was laying the groundwork for something bigger. I needed to find out what. So I paid a visit to Marlene's husband, Ron, the retired cop. I brought him the letter and asked, if someone keeps doing this stuff, leaving trash, making false claims, trying to find me, what can I do? He looked it over, raised an eyebrow and said, "You document everything. You build a pattern. If she escalates, you've got ammo, but you need proof she's behind it. Proof, right? That's when I remembered the small outdoor camera I had installed after the driveway incidents. It wasn't high-tech, but it did the job. I pulled the SD card and started reviewing the past couple of nights. Bingo. 3 nights. We'll go at 2:12 a.m. A blurry figure in a robe crept across my front lawn. I paused the footage, the way she moved, the shape of her hair, the fact that she walked directly toward the porch like she knew where to go. It was her, Karen. She bent down and placed something on the mat. Then she slipped away like a cartoon villain. I fast-forwarded to the next clip, the poop bag. That was all I needed. The next day I filed a police report for harassment. It wasn't a major case, but the officer took it seriously after I handed over the footage. He even gave me a case number and said I could pursue a restraining order if it continued. Still, Karen wasn't done. The very next week, she submitted a complaint to the city zoning office, claiming that I was running a commercial towing operation from my home. I nearly choked when I read the letter. She told them that multiple unmarked trucks were coming to my house at odd hours and that I was clearly storing impounded vehicles on residential property. All lies. Of course. I laughed when I read it until I realized something. Karen wasn't just trying to harass me, she was trying to destroy me. She wanted the city involved. She wanted to label me a nuisance, maybe even get my property cited or restricted, so I got ahead of her. I scheduled a meeting with the city code officer, brought my camera footage, Jamal's business card, and a full record of Karen's behavior. From the driveway blockings to the fake fines to the dog poop. I showed them the timeline, the video evidence, even copies of the complaint letters. I made it clear I wasn't retaliating, I was responding calmly. Legally, the officer took one look at it and said, "Sir, she's abusing her position. We'll take it from here." Within a week, Karen received a cease and desist letter from the city, apparently. She had made complaints about several other neighbors, to one woman for having too many potted plants and another for improper lawn height. The city opened a formal review of her HOA position and requested a community vote for proper board elections. Karen was stunned. Suddenly, her power wasn't just slipping, it was being ripped away. But of course, in true Karen fashion, she didn't go down with grace. She went for a final blow. One morning, I woke up to a commotion outside. Sirens, lights, 2 police cruisers parked near my house. I opened the door and found officers knocking on my door. Karen stood across the street, arms folded, fake tears in her eyes. One officer asked, "Are you the homeowner?" "Yes, sir." "What's going on?" "We received a report of a possible stolen vehicle ring operating from this address." I stared at him, stunned. "A what?" "She claims multiple vehicles have been towed to and from this property illegally." I was speechless. She had actually tried to have me arrested. "Come with me," I said. I walked into the back, showed him the garage completely empty except for my own truck and tanks, stuff. No extra cars, no impounds, no signs of anything remotely shady. I explained the whole story again. The officer looked skeptical at first, but once I showed him the letter from the city, the video footage, and the police report I'd already filed for harassment, he nodded. "All right, this lines up. Looks like you're the one being targeted." He walked back across the street, spoke to Karen for a few minutes, and then she slammed her door without saying a word. She knew it was over. The next day, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. Turns out, once the city got involved, the pressure mounted fast. She was fined for improper use of HOA authority and ordered to dissolve the single-member board she'd created. The neighborhood voted to replace her, and just like that, Queen Karen lost her crown. I didn't throw a party. I didn't gloat. But when I walked tank past her house and saw her packing boxes, I gave her a nod. She didn't return it. The day the for sale sign went up in Karen's yard was the first time the neighborhood truly exhaled. It wasn't just relief, it was liberation. The tight, invisible grip she'd had on the street for years was finally loosening. For so long, people had kept their heads down, afraid to speak up, afraid to get on her radar. But now, with her forced out of the HOA, exposed for her harassment, and facing official city pressure, even Karen realized she had no more cards to play. Still, it wasn't like she vanished overnight. Karen was petty to the bone, and she wasn't going to leave without making the whole process as dramatic as possible. She held yard sales every weekend that seemed less about clearing out her home and more about broadcasting her exit like a slow, bitter parade. She plastered neon signs all over her lawn. "Everything must go. Final days. HOA corruption equals I'm moving." One sign literally said, "Neighbors turned against me. You're welcome." Nobody came. The first weekend, a few folks drove by out of curiosity, but when they saw Karen standing there, arms folded, eyes scanning like a hawk, they kept driving. Even Marlene told me she almost stopped to browse until she spotted Karen glaring at her over a rack of discount scarves. "I'd rather shop from a pirate ship," she told me, sipping tea on her porch. What Karen didn't realize was that she had poisoned her own well by trying to control everything and everyone. She'd lost the community she claimed to protect. Now people came out just to enjoy the peace. Kids rode bikes again, lawn chairs started popping up on front yards. People waved more. The block felt like a neighborhood again, not a war zone. I mostly kept my head down during those last few weeks of Karen's reign. I didn't want to provoke her into dragging things out, but I noticed the looks. She'd see me walking tank, and her eyes would follow me like I'd personally ruined her life. And maybe, in her mind, I had. But the truth was, she'd done it to herself. One Wednesday morning, as I left to grab groceries, I spotted a moving truck backing into her driveway. The license plate said Texas. I figured this was at her exit. Part of me didn't believe it until I saw actual furniture being hauled out. Dining chairs, picture frames, a ridiculously large mirror. It was real. She was going. That evening something unexpected happened. There was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Karen standing there, not in her usual tracksuit or sunglasses, but in jeans and a wrinkled cardigan. She looked tired, worn out. Her eyes were puffy, and she wasn't holding any papers or letters or HOA violation forms, just her keys in one hand and a look I couldn't quite read. I didn't say anything, I just waited. She cleared her throat and said, "I wanted to speak to you before I leave." I raised an eyebrow. "All right." There was a pause, and then, "You won. You know." I blinked. This wasn't a competition. Karen gave a small laugh, but it was bitter. "Maybe not for you, but for me it always was. I've spent so much time trying to keep this place perfect that I didn't realize I was ruining it for everyone else." I didn't respond. She looked down. I thought I was doing the right thing, enforcing rules, protecting property values, but somewhere along the way, I guess I stopped listening. That much was true. She sighed. "You embarrassed me. With the tow, with the vote, with the city." She looked up, but maybe I needed it. I folded my arms. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm leaving, and I don't want to carry this with me." She paused. I wanted to say, "Sorry." Now that was a sentence I never expected to hear from Karen. I didn't say I forgave her. I didn't invite her in. But I nodded and said, "I hope you find peace wherever you're going." She nodded too, then turned and walked away. That was the last time I ever saw her. The next morning her car was gone. The moving truck had rolled out, and by noon, the for sale sign had a big red sold sticker slapped across it. I stood on my porch with Tank by my side and looked across the street. The place already felt different. Lighter. Later that week, the HOA held a proper election. Marlene ran for president and won by a landslide. Her husband Ron agreed to be the treasurer, and a young couple from the corner volunteered to manage landscaping complaints. It was the first time the HOA had more than one member in years. The new board made immediate changes. No more nitpicking about garden flags or trash bins. They sent out a notice that the HOA's job was to support the neighborhood, not police. People smiled when they read it. Some even framed it out. As the weeks passed, life found a rhythm. I started gardening again. I added solar lights along the path to my door. Nobody complained. A few neighbors stopped by just to chat, something unheard of when Karen ruled the block. Tank became the unofficial mayor of the street, getting pets and treats from kids and retirees alike. But the story didn't end there. A month after Karen left, I received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a small note, no letterhead, just a handwritten message. "You were right, I wasn't." And a Polaroid photo of Karen, standing in front of a small white cottage somewhere warm. She was smiling. A real smile, not the tight-lipped grimace I had known for months. She held a tiny dog in one arm. I sat down on the porch, photo in hand, Tank resting at my feet. I stared at that image for a while, unsure how I felt. Maybe a part of me wanted her to suffer longer, but another part of me, maybe the better part, was just glad it was over. Karen was gone. My driveway was free. The war was done. The summer air felt different after Karen left, lighter somehow, cleaner, easier to breathe. It was as if her departure had scrubbed the tension right out of the atmosphere. For the first time since moving into the neighborhood, I could hear birds in the morning without that tightness in my chest, the kind that used to come from wondering what passive-aggressive note might be taped to my door. The old Karen-era HOA signs came down one by one. People began repainting shutters, planting flowers, adding wind chimes and hammocks and color back into their lives without fear of violating community standards. You could actually feel the neighborhood healing. The new HOA board, led by Marlene and her crew, hosted a welcome back to the block cookout one Saturday in late August. For the first time, everyone actually came out. I grilled burgers while Marlene's husband Ron handled ribs. The younger couple on the corner brought cornhole boards. Kids ran around with sidewalk chalk and bubble wands. Someone even brought a Bluetooth speaker and played music that wasn't elevator jazz. People laughed. They stayed late. They relaxed. And I realized then just how much stress Karen had poured into the soil here, like slow poison. She had controlled everything from bin placement to porch lights, like she was defending a fortress instead of living in a neighborhood. But now people were just living together. I found myself smiling more, sleeping better. Even Tank, who had more energy, like the anxiety he used to absorb from me, was gone too. He'd trot up to every new neighbor like he was reintroducing himself, tail wagging like crazy. The funniest part, her house sold faster than anyone expected. Rumor was, that it went for under asking price after the buyers did a little background digging and learned about the HOA drama. Still, it was bought, and soon enough, there was movement across the street again. For a while, the house sat quiet, empty windows, no furniture, no signs of life. Then, one day, a silver SUV pulled into the driveway. Couple stepped out, man and a woman, both in their late 30s maybe, dressed casually. They didn't look nosy or entitled, just normal. The guy gave me a wave before unloading boxes from the trunk. The next day I brought over a welcome basket. Marlene had made 3 and asked if I'd deliver one since I lived right across from them. The couple smiled when they opened the door. "Hi," the man said. "You must be the neighbor across the street." "I am," I said, holding out the basket. "Welcome to the neighborhood. This is from the HOA. Don't worry, it's the new HOA." The woman laughed. "We heard about the last one, sounded intense." You could say that they introduced themselves as Marcus and Joy. He was an IT manager. She was a freelance designer. No kids, no drama. We talked for 10 minutes on the porch. They seemed kind, down to earth, and, most importantly, uninterested in policing how close my garbage can was to the curb. Over the next week, I'd see them occasionally taking walks in the evening, unpacking furniture, painting rooms with the windows open and music playing. The house that had once been ground zero of neighborhood tension was being slowly turned into a home again. But one afternoon, something odd happened. I was watering my tomato plants when Marcus came over holding a thick manila folder. "Hey," he said, "this was tucked up in one of the vents in the basement. We almost missed it, thought you might want to see it." He handed it to me. The folder was old, dusty, and taped shut with masking tape. Inside it was packed with pages of HOA complaints, emails, letters written in all, but they weren't addressed to just me. They were about everyone. Karen had apparently kept a detailed, almost obsessive file on every single household. Notes about trash violations, what kinds of flowers people planted, how often one guy power washed his driveway. Some pages even had timestamps and photos she must have taken from behind her blinds. "Is this Marcus asked. I shook my head slowly. "No, it's not, but I'm not surprised." There was a final envelope inside, marked private, do not open. Of course, I opened it. It was a letter. Written in Karen's unmistakably dramatic, aggressive style. "I did everything to preserve this neighborhood. They called me crazy, controlling, rude. But someday they'll understand. When the weeds come back, when the rules are forgotten, when the property values fall, they'll see. I was the only one who cared." She had signed it like a resignation letter, as if she had been some kind of martyr instead of a neighborhood menace. I showed it to Marlene, who read it and muttered. I knew she was keeping tabs. "But this is next level." Ron scanned the pages and said, "Best to shred this. The last thing we need is someone finding this in 20 years and thinking we lived under a dictatorship." And that's what we did. We burned it in the fire pit at the next block party. 1 page at a time. Everyone clapped when the private "do not open" letter went up in flames. It felt like closing a chapter, not just in my life but in the street story. A final purging of all the stress, bitterness and control that Karen had dumped into the neighborhood like oil into water. Months passed. The seasons changed. The new HOA met quarterly casual meetings with coffee and cookies, not rulebooks and fines. People decorated for Halloween, then Christmas, without Karen's permission. Nobody worried about curtain colors or wind chimes or lawn chairs. And me, I found peace. My driveway stayed clear. Tank stayed happy. I stayed out of trouble. Every once in a while I'd get a letter or text from someone who heard about what that happened and wanted to know how to handle their own HOA nightmare. I'd always tell them the same thing. Document everything, stand your ground, and if they park across your driveway, well, you know what to do, because sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it's just quiet, legal, permanent. Sometimes best revenge is the sound of a tow truck rolling away into the night. And peace filling the silence it leaves behind. Thanks for watching this story on Bright Reality. For more dramatic, real-life tales, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe to the channel.